Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. I miss you very much. Harley is right here on the right. I don't know how or when she'll make an appearance, but I'll do my best. 3 questions I'm going to ask you for the last chapter of Trouble River will be, what was Dewey's reaction when Grandma complimented his raft? How did he feel about meeting his sister? And the last question, do you think Dewey will build another raft? Why or why not? Hunter City. That's her interrupting me already. Boy, Grandma said, I reckon I'll need your help. I ain't no young girl anymore. Dewey and the man brought Grandma to her feet, and then they moved together up the bank. Dewey looked at the bank for a moment, there's the paw, watching the remains of the Rosy Bee slowly, lazily, the logs drifting apart around the bend. Well, that's the end of it, he said. You can make another boat, his grandma replied. Seems like I heard somebody say one of those wagons and those boats don't grow old out here in the West. Mine sure didn't. Build it again, she said. Only I tell you one thing, I ain't getting on it. I had my last trip on the water of any kind. You can build a golden boat with a silver platter, and I still won't get on it. She turned to that man, and you be careful with my rocking chair, young man. I didn't bring that chair 40 miles down river to have you drop it and break it. You folks come 40 miles down Trouble River? Yes, we did. My grandson makes that raft himself. Young man's a fine craftsman. I don't think too much of it when I first saw it, but now I think it's just fine. Dewey felt tears stinging his eyes at the unexpected praise. He couldn't even speak. Ain't many boys could bring a raft down that river, and that's a fact, the man said. I know some men tried to do those rapids and failed, but not my Dewey. Dewey looked up, coming toward him with great strides. Never had he looked taller or felt stronger. The sun behind him and the tears in Dewey's eyes made him seem like a giant. Dewey began to run, and he did not stop until he felt his pa's arms around him, holding him close. He wanted to blurt out with all the hardships and all the problems of the trip and all the fears that he had, but all he could say was, Pa. The boy and the old lady run them rapids on a bunch of logs, the man grunted. He set Grandma's rocker down. That old lady never even left her chair. He grinned over Dewey's head. Your ma's mighty eager to see you, Dewey, his pa said. He drew back and looked at him. She ain't gonna believe that you're all right until she sets eyes on you herself, son. He took Grandma by the arm. Ma, you look chipper as ever. She turned sharply to the man and said, You get that chair, mind you, and you be careful with it. The young man said, Yes, ma'am, I wouldn't drop it for nothing, he said. Your baby sister's going to be glad to meet you, too, Dad said. I reckon she's not going to believe it. A sister! His pa nodded. A fine baby girl. 2 days old and already bawling louder than a baby calf. And Ma's all right? Oh, son, she's fine, Dad said. Praise the Lord, Grandma said. Every one of us made it out of here alive. Behind them, Charlie limped quickly up the path. He paused and shook himself off. Water sprayed all over them. Don't upset me, you worthless critter. You know that was Grandma. I didn't come 40 miles down the river to have you throw me to the ground. Charlie moved ahead, content and moving quickly. They were on higher ground now, and he hoped to catch one final glimpse of the Rosy Bee, and he felt reluctance to let her go completely. Pa, maybe you can see her from here, he said. It was a strong, great raft. I didn't know how to handle her at first, But sometimes she went real easy, all by herself. Then sometimes she would just move on her own and I couldn't stop her. Just like a woman, Pa said. The tall man was laughing. Is that some logs over there on the other side of the bushes? He stood up by his pa and looked over. No, I guess they're all gone. It sure was a fine raft, Pa said. If it kept you safe. He put his arms around Dewey's shoulder. The four of them, followed by some children from the wagon camp, walked up slowly and rutted the roadway up to Hunter City. Grandma pulled at her wet, flapping skirt and looked down at her feet. Pa walked by Dewey, clutching his shoulder tightly and saying nothing. The man with the rocking chair was walking behind them and whistling. The first time I've been to Hunter City in a year, Grandma said. Neither of you have anything better to do? Well, we'll make out somehow, Ma, don't worry. One of the boys running behind them stepped up on the other side of Dewey. What was it you come down the river on? He asked. A raft, Dewey said. Where'd you get it? Dewey gleamed with pride, and he said, I made it. What did you make it out of? I got some logs, 9 of them, Dewey said, beginning to warm to the conversation. Pretty big logs, about that big, and he showed them how wide it was, and I nailed them at the top. Hey, look, Pa interrupted. Yonder's your ma coming. I told her to stay in the Sawyer house, only I guess she had to see for herself that you were okay. She's been half out of her mind with worry. Dewey looked up and saw his ma coming toward them with Mrs. Sawyer. He could hear Mrs. Sawyer saying, See, look yonder. I told you he was all right. All that worrying was for nothing. Just look yonder. His ma said nothing, but held her arms out, and he ran to her. Ma! And she hugged him, and he was suddenly aware of his muddy clothes, and he said, Ma, my clothes. I was so worried about you, son. I was so worried, Dewey. Oh, we were all right, Ma. I'm only a little muddy and wet, and he broke off because he caught sight of his sister. What does the baby look like? Oh, she looks just like you. Proudly, Mrs. Sawyer lowered her arms, and he saw the baby wrapped in a small white blanket with its red face, as red as a pumpkin. I think pumpkins are orange, but here's the picture. Sorry, it's a little wobbly. He didn't say anything for a moment. He had imagined a plump, golden-haired baby, sturdy and fat, and here was the tiniest little thing he had ever seen. This here's the boat, he said quickly. I reckon she'll turn it around all right. Wait, let me reread that again. That doesn't make sense. He remembered suddenly how disappointed he had been when his grandma first asked him when she first saw his raft. This here's a boat, he said. I reckon she'll turn out all right. His ma pushed his hair back from his forehead and then hugged him again. Ma, I'm all muddy. Let's all go back to the house, Mrs. Sawyer said firmly. The boy was tired and hungry, and he's done a man's work. And you, he said, turning to his wife, you ought to be resting. And as far as walking toward town, they were all so tired their knees were beginning to tremble. And suddenly, the thought of eating and resting and taking his feet and just putting them up was perhaps the most exciting words. Perhaps it was the best thing he could think of, and maybe that little boy in the wagon camp could build his own raft, and maybe he could help him. Someday, he said, someday I'm going to build another boat. The end. This is an AR book. You can take a test on it if you want to. You don't have the book with you, so if you need my help, you can call me, and I should be able to walk you through the test. Questions. One more time. What was Dewey's reaction when Grandma said how she felt about the boat? What was Dewey's reaction to seeing his sister for the first time? And do you think Dewey will really build another boat? Why or why not? Let me holler for Harley. Maybe you'll get to see her. Harley! Harley! Apparently not. You're going to have to wait for the next installment of our next book to possibly meet the dog. I'm hoping that we can have a meeting where we can all get onto the Teams app, maybe all have lunch together, maybe do a quick social skills lesson, but I need everybody to sign up for Teams. I miss you all very, very much. You know you can call me anytime or email me. Have a good day and give me a call when you're ready to answer the questions, or you can type them. Take care.